Okay, well, welcome to our first tutorial on Python. So the very first thing that you're going to want to do is go to wmcicompsci.ca, hit CS20 and resources, and if you haven't already installed Thonny, there's a link right here underneath Python. So if you open that one up, what you're going to find is a page that looks like this. And in order to install it, just click on the Windows button there, or if you're running a Mac, obviously on the Mac or Linux. But if you click on Windows, you're going to get a download for Thonny, and you probably are going to have to just say report, or the keep rather, hit keep, and if you hit show more and keep anyway, then it's going to download it and allow you to open that up. And that's going to be what we use in order to use Python on our local computer. So hopefully that works just fine for you. If you're having any issues, please let me know. So once you've installed Thonny, what we're going to do is then go to the CS20 textbook. So again, from WMCI Comp Sci, go to CS20 resources, hit the CS20 textbook, and then scroll down, and I'm going to keep on going. So I already talked to you in class about this quick Python overview. You may want to use this page as kind of reference as we go through this next part of the course. So in here, I've talked a lot about different bits and pieces, just kind of getting you going through the basic structures of Python. And you can certainly come back to it at any point and just double check that you understand what's going on. But for now, we're going to move on and take a look at variables, data types, and user input. So this section right here. So first thing that we want to talk about are 4 primitive data types. So in class, we talked about the idea that we have an integer, which is any number that doesn't have a decimal. We have a float, which is any number that does have a decimal. We have strings, that's words, for example. Anything that's contained within quotes is going to be a string. And finally, we have booleans, and that's going to be a true or a false. So for example, if we were to look at this little chunk of code right here, and you might want to pause the video right now, make sure that you can take a guess as to what this program is going to do, and then I'll talk you through it. So hit pause, figure it out, and then continue. So in this case, we know that x is being assigned the value of 4, and that's an integer. Then we can see down here that y is being assigned the value of 3 plus whatever x was. Since we've assigned x the value of 4, that means this is going to be 3 plus 4, or 7. So x was 4, y is now set to 7. So when I print this out and I see x plus y, that means that what I'm doing is I'm going to add, so this plus sign, because Python sees that this is an integer and this is an integer, then it's going to combine them using addition. So that means I'm going to have the 4 plus the 7, so this should get me 11. So when I run, I'm going to see an 11 there. Okay? Now, let's say that we tried this one. Once again, take a look at the code, pause the video, and then hit play again when you think you know what's going to happen. So in this one, I can see that I'm setting the value of x to be a 4, I'm setting the value of y to be a 3, z is the string 5, again, both of these were integers, and now x is being reassigned a value of 2. So even though I set x to be a 4 up here, underneath I'm reassigning it to be a new value, and you can do that whenever you want. So in this case, the old value of x is just tossed out, we no longer care about it. Now x is going to equal a 2. So that means that down in line number 5, when I print x plus y, what that's going to be is going to be my 2, the new value of x, plus the 3 that we had as our value of y. Those are both integers, so that means this is going to be addition. So that means I'm going to add those together and get a 5. And finally, let's take a look at this one. So once again, pause the video, take a look. When you think you know what it's going to do, continue. So here, if I have x being assigned a value of 4 as an integer, y is the integer 3, and z being set to the string 5 in letters, when I try to print y plus z, that means that Python is going to see y as an integer, it's going to be seeing that z is a string, and so now when I try to add these together, Python's going to get very confused because it doesn't know, what do you want me to do with this integer and this string? I don't know how to combine those things. If they were both integers, it would add them. If they were both strings, it would concatenate them or join them together. In this case, Python is going to throw an error, and you're going to see unsupported operand types for add, int and string. So just to explain what I was talking about before, let's say that this one was the number 5. It looked like this. Now if I hit run on this, I'm going to get an 8 because Python is going to add the integer 3 and the 5 integer that z is. But if I put it back to the string 5, and let's say that I made this the string 3 like this, now those are both strings. So when I combine these, when I run this, what it's actually going to do is concatenate or join these two things together. So that's what happened right there. Okay, so we've talked a little bit already in class about using Thonny, so I'm going to skip past this part, but if you want, you're more than welcome to take a closer look in the text and make sure you understand what's going on. In the end, the important thing is that on your computer at home, you should be able to run Thonny. It should look like this. And let's say that we just wrote something here. We said print hello world. And if I run that, you're going to notice that the very first thing that happens is Python pops up a dialog box asking where you want to save this folder. So just like we did in class, I'd suggest make a folder, maybe in your documents. And so if you hit new folder and call it like Python or something like that, or Computer Science 20, whatever you'd like. And then I'll just call this one testing. In which case we're going to run it and we'll see the results down here in the interpreter. Okay, so make sure that that works for you on your local computer as well. Now, a few other things that we want to talk about in terms of stuff that we want to be aware of. So in Reborg, we used the idea of comments, and we basically did that at the top of each chunk of code. Whenever we were building a new chunk of code, we put a little comment at the top explaining what was going to come next. And Python uses the same idea. So in other words, anything that follows a hashtag is something that Python is going to ignore, and it's just there for other programmers to look at. Now, every time that you write a program for me that you're going to hand in, you should start it with something that looks like this. So in other words, some comment that says, you know, what is the point of the program, what's it called, who made it, and when did they make it. Okay? So make sure that yours has something similar to that for any program that you're going to hand in to me. Other than that, we talked already about variables and how those work, but I'll just quickly refer to them once more. So here, if you're using a single equal sign, that means I'm assigning a value. As an aside, 2 equal signs means I'm checking a value, as we talked about in class. But here, we're assigning the variable message to be the string what's up doc, n is being assigned the integer 17, and pi is being assigned the float 3.14159. Okay, a couple of other things to note. You cannot do it in the reverse order. You can't say 17 equals n. The variable must always be on the left-hand side. Again, if you use 2 equal signs, that means you're checking the value. So 1 equal sign is setting, 2 equal sign is setting. Sorry, 2 equal signs is checking. Okay, beyond that, I'm going to scroll past this stuff because I think we've talked about most of this in class already. I should refer a little bit to some ideas that we need to make sure we have in our heads as we're naming our variables. So a good variable name, for example, might be something like liters underscore per underscore 100 underscore kilometers. That's a really good descriptive name, and it's a nice way to go. Do something like that instead of using just an L. So please make sure that your variable names are descriptive. If you're writing inside of Thonny, let's say that I wrote that variable name. So if I said liters per 100 kilometers, and I said it's like whatever, 6.7 or whatever. Now, anytime that I want to use that variable again, what I could do is I could start typing the variable name and then hit tab, and it's going to auto-complete that variable for me. So that you don't have to type it out in full every single time. So keep that in mind as you're creating your variables. Make them nice, long, and descriptive, and then use tab to auto-complete to make it easier for you to type. Okay? Other things that we want to be aware of here is that you can't ever have a space inside your variable name, because if you do, Python's going to get confused as to where that variable starts and ends. And so that's why we always use the underscore character. So my name, it'll have an underscore in between my and name. Same thing here. Every time that you start a new word, just put an underscore there. And you also want to notice here that I'm never capitalizing anything. Make sure in your variables you don't capitalize anything either. Beyond that, a couple things you need to be careful with. You cannot start a variable name with a number. So 76 trombones would not be a correct variable name. You can't use fancy characters like the $, for example. So keep it to just numbers and letters and the underscore. But this one here is kind of an interesting problem. So if we had the class equals computer science 101, it would seem that that should be a fine variable name, but it actually isn't. And the reason is that there are special words inside of Python called keywords. Those things mean something to Python. And here's our list of all of them. You don't have to like memorize this or know what they are necessarily. Inside of Thonny, what you're going to see is, let's say that I wanted to create a new variable. And let's say that I did say class equals comp sci 20 or whatever. You'll notice that the word class automatically got turned into a different color and it's bold. And the reason for that is that Python knows, hey, that thing's a keyword, so that should also give you a hint that you wouldn't be able to use that as your variable name. All right. Beyond that, just a reminder, when we take user input, we did this in class as well, but we use this input function like this. So if you run this and we put in Walter Murray, we would get Walter Murray as the result when we print out that variable of your school. Do keep in mind that every time that you take in input from the user, it's always going to come back as a string if you use this input function. So that means that in a situation like this one here, if I run this code, and it asks what's the current year, and we'll say it's 2020, and what year are you going to graduate from high school? Let's say 2022, and I hit OK. What I actually get in this case is an unsupported operand type for sub, and it tells me str and str on line 4. So a reminder, this is short for string. And if you want, you can take a second right now, pause this video, and see whether or not you can figure out how to fix the problem that just happened here. So go ahead and pause it if you want and give it a try. And once you've given that a go, I'll keep going here. So the issue is that current year and grad year are both coming in as strings. If I want to find out what is the difference between these, so here I'm trying to subtract them, and that's where the error comes from. So it's telling me on line 4, I don't know how to deal with subtracting strings. So what we can do instead is we can say something like, I could go current year is equal to, and I'm going to convert it from the string that it used to be to an integer, like this. And I'll do the same thing for grad year, is going to equal the integer version of grad year. Now if I do this, and I give this a run, let's try it again, 2020 right now, 2022 later, now I'll get something like you will graduate in 2 years. You'll notice that I did something a little bit different in this example than what we've done before. Normally I've been using a plus sign to concatenate these things. You can also combine different data types using the print command if you separate them with commas, like I did right here. So feel free to do that as well. All right, at this point, you should know enough that you can now try some of these practice problems here. So your first thing that you should do is try practice problems here on number 2.7. So there's a few of them. We've got the area of a circle. So you're just going to write me a program. It should compute the area of a circle. So remember, it's just, if you did, well, I guess, you know what, if you don't know what the formula is, feel free to look it up online. But basically, you just need to find out the radius and then print back what the area of the circle is. Additionally, you're going to make me one that does area of a rectangle. So again, ask the user for width and height, and then print out what the area is in a nice little message. And finally, you'll make a little car gas usage. So, for example, you'll just ask how far did you drive, how many kilometers did it take, and use that to figure out the liters per 100 kilometers. Okay, so give these a go. These are really, really helpful for you to give a try. You'll notice that I did put a little reveal solution button here because these are your first ones. I thought it would be useful to put a solution to each of them there. Please don't look at those until you've given it a really good shot yourself. But once you have, if you want, you're welcome to take a look there. Okay? So hopefully everyone has a good chance to try those. When you get those done, you should be ready to try our first assignment in Python, and I'll explain that after. Have a great day, everyone.